Hello, everybody. This is Wander to the Edge. And look, there's Zan from Where Gals Wander.
Here I am. Hello.
And
And
who am
there's
I, Zan?
Adam.
You're supposed to, uh,
What what am I supposed to do? You didn't prep me
no,
for this
I
again.
know. I thought it'd be better if we didn't rehearse it. So you're supposed to tell people who I am. Who am I?
I was going to, and then you interrupted me.
Okay. My apologies.
Yeah, you should. This is Adam. He's from Edge of Adventure. He's
And it
also
is,
obnoxious.
yes,
And
I do my best.
ambassador.com.
I do my best to try to keep up with Zan. And it's great to see everybody. Happy Saturday. This is Wander to the Edge, and it is time to interview and introduce you guys to another one of our great friends and travelers. So, Zan, who's on the show today?
Her name is Andrea Cannon. She is the founder, creator, content designer, hiker extraordinaire of Be Utahful.com. She's also on Instagram. She has about a following of 11,000 or so. And actually, looking at her photos of Utah and all the adventures she goes on is what inspired me to take my recent trip back to Utah. So I'm excited to have her on the show.
And she's coming up next, right here on Wander to the Edge. Andrea Cannon, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Great
I
to have
can't
you. Go ahead. Sorry, Zan. Go ahead. You first. Go ahead.
I can't wait to talk to you about all things Utah. But
Awesome.
other than that, you also have this whole other travel adventure in former life. And I was reading through your bio. You have started off taking about 250 to 300 flights a year.
Mhm.
And in the real world, you're also a pharmacist. So let's talk a little bit about you, Andrea, and what's your story and
Mhm.
how do you go from being a pharmacist, moving to Utah, and then becoming an expert in all things Utah?
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate you guys having me on, and it was so nice to, hear that I just inspired your most recent trip to Utah. I've seen some of those pictures, and it looks amazing. But so I just wanted to, kind of give a little bit about my background. I'm originally from North Carolina, and I went to undergrad and pharmacy school in North Carolina there. My parents are in Greensboro. I went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And then I moved to the east coast of Greenville, or of North Carolina, which is Greenville, and worked there for a couple of years in outpatient oncology. And then my husband matched for general surgery residency, and he actually matched in Utah. And so we had only ever been to Utah. I'd been one time before he decided that he was going to interview in Utah, and he had never been, and then came out to interview, really liked it. And then he did a second look, and he ended up matching in Utah. And we were really excited, but also very nervous. Hadn't really spent a lot of time out west, and you wouldn't really know it from looking at my current bio, but I didn't do any hiking or really any exploring until I moved out to Utah. So that's quite different from what's going on now. So when we moved out to Utah, he had his very first, vacation in September, right away, basically. And we went and spent a day at basically each of the national parks in Utah. And that was basically game changing for me. That's what really kicked it off, and got me started. But I've always been, interested in traveling, just because I know you mentioned the travel as well. My first like really big trip was our honeymoon to Santorini and Athens, and that really got like my real start of the wanderlust kick. But even before that, we had been to Jamaica, Panama, lots of places in the U.S., et cetera. But that really got me like, wow, this is a whole new world. I really want to explore a lot more, and I really haven't stopped since. So So, and then now I am actually a medical liaison. So I do travel for work now too. And so I use the pharmacist skills that I have as a medical liaison. And I'm right now mostly in the Southwest.
So, Andrea, you are originally from North Carolina.
Mhm.
You are now living and basing out of Utah.
Right.
And let's talk about your website here, Utahfulworld.com. What happened? Did you fall in love with Utah when you moved out there?
So not really. This is actually kind of a funny story. I mean, I like Utah, but it's I started posting pictures just for my friends. Like, I had probably 500 max followers on Instagram, and I was posting pictures, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, from North Carolina and the beach type landscape and everything, it is so different from what it looks like out here. There's jutting ridges, bright red rocks, just it's different scenery every corner that you turn around." And so I was posting just pictures for my friends, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, you should start a blog." And I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, maybe." And so I kind of came up with this because it was from my transition from North Carolina, and I just landed in Utah. So I started a blog, but it was really just for my friends and family. And like I said, same thing with my Instagram, was really just focused on friends and family. But then over, I don't know, the course of the past couple of years, I decided to kind of take it a little more seriously, and grow both my Instagram and my blog and everything from there.
So you weren't in love with Utah when you first arrived. You weren't an outdoors woman. You weren't really a hiker. And yet, I'm reading these articles. You know what I'm going to ask you? I'm reading these articles about the best hikes that you can take in Utah. And I get to Angel's Landing, which is known for being one of the most challenging hikes. And yet you give it 4 out of 5 stars. So my first reaction is, okay, what does it take to make a hike challenging enough for you now to give it 5 stars? So tell us about that. Tell us about your ranking system.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's back up for just a second before I touch on Angel's
Yeah.
Landing, and just, Utah in general. So I was a beach girl, right? I went to the beach every single week, when I lived in North Carolina over the summer. And, there's no beach, not at least the kind I'm used to in Utah. We have some really cool lakes and reservoirs, but it took me a while to kind of, let that grow on me. And then the wintertime is a little cold for my liking. Fortunately, it's, a dry cold rather than like the Northeast, very wet, damp, feel it through your bones cold. But it took like a while for Utah to grow on me to the point where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I think especially with the coronavirus pandemic and everything, and just being grateful for everything that's just so accessible to me, with right now just living in Salt Lake City. I mean, we live downtown, and really good hikes are within 10 minutes of my house, right? It's just so accessible, and they're not like the ones that you hear about and see tons of pictures about. Like, we'll just go and we won't even really see that many other people hiking, even with the uptick of everyone trying to get outside recently. So Utah has definitely grown on me. It took a little bit of time, but it is so beautiful out here. And so, fortunately, over time, that it's definitely gotten a lot better, and I really like it now. But Angel's Landing, so 4 out of 5 stars was about the difficulty level. Just to highlight, it's not 4 out of 5 stars as far as a hike, because that is a 5 star hike and definitely recommended if you're ever out in southern Utah. But for me, so from a difficulty perspective, the first part of that trail starts out entirely paved. And including like the switchbacks, like Walter's Wiggles, they're infamous switchbacks, that you may have seen pictures of before. They're really intense switchbacks, but they're all paved. So that part is really, really nice. The first majority of the trail paved very easily, like you don't have to navigate any like water crossings or lots of difficult boulders or anything like that. And then, the chain section at the end is definitely more difficult. And if you have, if you're afraid of heights or anything like that, maybe wouldn't necessarily recommend that hike per se. But they do have the chains there, and some hikes that are difficult like that maybe only have a rope that's secured by you, and then you have to put it on and remove it or something like that, which is why that was like a 4 out of 5 from a difficulty perspective. I'm thinking of a couple that I think are a little bit more challenging, than that, which I would rate like 5 stars from a difficulty perspective. And one of them is one of my absolute favorite hikes, I can't ever name my favorite one, but it's actually in Wyoming. It's in the Tetons, and it's the Paintbrush Canyon to Cascade Canyon Loop. It's 19 miles and over a ton of different terrain, and it's around 4,000 feet of elevation gain and then loss as a loop. When we did that trail, we probably saw about 19, 20 moose, saw a fox on the trail, came face to face with a bear, not intentionally, but it was on the trail. I mean, that was very intense. We just didn't, and in the backcountry, we just did not see a lot of other people. We probably didn't see another person before and after the bear for another mile. And just, so that to me, like, because there's a lot of terrain back there, a lot of navigation, you could encounter storms, not a lot of people. That would be like more of a 5-star from a difficulty perspective, just with that navigation piece added in there. So, yeah.
Andrea Cannon is our guest today for Wander to the Edge. Andrea, lots of things about your story are fascinating. Let's talk Ironman. What's that like? The training for that alone has to be fun.
Definitely. So let's see, back up just a little bit. Once I moved out to Utah, there's a lot of people that do, cycling as well. And I have always been a swimmer, actually. I did swimming, like high school swimming. I did, year-round swimming. I did swim coaching. I've probably taught 100 people how to swim. I really enjoy swimming a lot. And a lot of swimmers naturally think of, okay, what other competitions are there that you could do with swimming? And running's never been my favorite, but I knew that I could do it. I just didn't have a bike. So we had something through work where we did like a relay across the country, and I did the Indianapolis to Pittsburgh section, and they got us a bike and we did some training for it. And it was all to raise money for cancer research. And that's what actually got me into cycling. And my plan was, well, if I do this and it goes well, then I'm going to start doing some triathlons. And I had already just started. I had gotten a bike, and like 6 weeks later, I just decided to do my first triathlon, actually. So I didn't really wait like I had originally planned. Just like, let's go for it. 6 weeks into actually owning a bike, and I'm already doing it. But I did a Olympic distance triathlon, which is around like 1,500 meters of swimming. Then you do around 25 to 28, depending, miles of biking, and then you do 6 miles or 10K of running. And that was my first one, and I was pretty hooked after that. So I then signed up to do my first half Ironman, which was around 2.5 years ago now. And I signed up to do it back in North Carolina so my family could come visit me. And it was in Wilmington, which is at the coast, and I was super, super excited for it. But then they had a hurricane, and it actually got canceled. And so about the Ironman season is, more towards centered around like the warmer months. Of course, this was going to be in October once, the heat of North Carolina kind of wears off a little bit, but it's still warm enough that you can get in the ocean and do a swim and everything. And so because that happened, I looked at the schedule for the rest of the year, and there weren't very many. There's only 6 weekends left in the season. And I was like, okay, which one can I do? And I found a half Ironman actually in Cabo. So my very first half Ironman was in Cabo in Mexico. And I got to bring my whole family, like my mom, my dad, my sister, my husband, they all came out. And that has a lot to do with like the frequent flyer miles that I have from traveling. I flew them all out myself, and said, hey, Wilmington didn't work out, but maybe we could do Cabo. And everybody was like, okay. And so that was my very first half Ironman, and that was in November of 2018. And so then last year I did 2 more half Ironmans, and that was, the first one was in Ohio, and have a lot of extended family in Ohio, so that was kind of the reason behind that. And then I actually got to finally do Wilmington last year as well, in October. And so then the goal was this year to ramp that up to the next step, to do a full Ironman. And so I'm currently actually training. I hope that it is still on. A lot of the events have been canceled, but mine is in November, end of November, like right around Thanksgiving time, the week before. So they haven't canceled it yet, and hopefully it'll still happen. But I'm training for it.
Tell us a little bit about, I'm noticing a theme. Like,
Mhm.
I'm just going to go for it. Like, I'm going to train for a triathlon. No, I'm just going to go out and I'm going to do one. I'm going to move to Utah and I'm going to do all of these like 19-mile hikes or whatever it is that you're kind
Mhm,
of focusing on. I noticed that one of your favorite books and your favorite audio kind of has a theme
mhm.
about being a badass. So if you were to give your personal lesson in how to be a badass, what would you kind of encourage, or what would your lesson be? Your TED Talk, so to speak.
It's tough off the cuff, but what I will say
Yeah.
is, just definitely like you already highlighted, going for it. I think I've talked and thought a lot about how I wanted my life to look and the design of my life, and what that includes. And then, not being scared to just go for it and see what happens. And really, I don't want to say try your best, because sometimes trying gets a bad rep, but just really just going for it, right? Like absolutely, deciding what you want and then making it happen. Because I think, especially with what we've seen here in the past couple of months, with everyone being, at home or whatever, is, making sure that, are your surroundings the way that you want them to be, are the people in your life who you need, are your activities, are you located, generally near those, all those things. And I think that has been something that has really come to light over the past 6 months or so. Especially for me, like I said, even with like, my original feelings about Utah, and it's constantly gotten better, but especially over the past 6 months, I have just thought, oh my gosh, how grateful I am to be here and where we are and going for it, because, of all the adventures we get to go on while people are stuck in their high rise or whatever. So, making sure that that is, that whatever, you are looking for in your life, that you're going out on the, in the mornings and the evenings after you're doing your, job, or on the weekends, and you're actually creating it rather than just hoping that it will happen.
You've been to so many interesting and beautiful places. One in particular that I know is meaningful for you, and I want you to tell us about it. Your trip to Sweden, and you were able to see the Northern Lights. And that must have been a trip of a lifetime.
Yeah, it was really cool. That was a really cool experience. So I travel a lot for work, of course, and when I travel for work, that's solo, obviously. But I really hadn't done any international solo vacations before. I'd gone to Hawaii by myself and then met up with a friend while I was there, like a few days later, and things like that. But never really an international solo trip before. And I had some time off at the end of the year last year, and with my husband being a surgery resident, he really doesn't get a ton of time off. So he gets an average of 4 days per month, and then three 7-day blocks. So he didn't have any time, but I did. So I was like, I really want to do something, on this available time I have off. So I decided, what are the things I'm looking for? What do I want to do? And seeing the Northern Lights was definitely on my bucket list. So I decided probably a month in advance and made a trip, planned a trip, and went up to Sweden to see the Northern Lights. But first I stopped in Stockholm, and just got the lay of the land there, and went up to Abisko, which is, in the Arctic Circle. It's very far north, like probably one of the farthest north places in Sweden, that if you take a look at the map, it's really right close to the top. And then, hung out there for 4 days, and got to see the Northern Lights several times, which was really, really cool. Although I would definitely love to see them again. They're freaking amazing. And then went back down to, Stockholm, and spent some more time there before flying back home. That trip was absolutely incredible because, like I said, it was my first international solo travel experience. It was one of those things, just like you guys have just recently mentioned. I really just went for it, like right. I planned it about a month in advance. It was something I always wanted to see the Northern Lights, so I decided to go see the Northern Lights. And it was just a really, really, really cool experience, and highly would recommend Sweden. They are such incredibly nice people, and I felt very welcomed there, and I had a really good time just meeting a lot of different people and interacting with the culture.
Just as a follow-up question to that, as I read your Instagram posts and I read the captions, there's a lot of questions that you get from other women
Mhm.
asking about how to get this spirit or this courage just to go for it. And they want your advice about, how do I take those steps to just go for it? And then
Mhm.
they also ask you a lot of advice about how do I document my trips and my travels? How do you get all these amazing photos as you're traveling alone? So
Right.
can you share some of your secrets?
Yeah, definitely. And I'd say first, I mean, I'm very incredibly lucky to have a supportive spouse and family. Obviously, I mentioned my parents and my sister earlier from, the Ironman, and them coming out to see that. But same thing with my husband. Like he, if I want to go down to Southern Utah for the weekend and he's busy, like it's okay, like, go for it. Just let me know where you're going, like check in, just to make sure you're safe or, something like that. So I'm just like incredibly lucky to have a partner that absolutely understands that I have this crazy sense of adventure and just need to keep going. And so, that's kind of the first thing is just making sure, people understand who are around you that this is what you want to do. They can come with you or they don't have to, but the support is always really really helpful. And just being smart in general, like it doesn't, you don't necessarily need to go to maybe the most dangerous place in the world as the first time that you've ever traveled solo. You can start with smaller trips, something where you feel like a little bit more comfortable, other people. Same thing with hiking. If you're going to do something like that solo, would highly, highly recommend you letting people know where you're going, what time you're leaving, and what time you anticipate being back. And when, just so that they know when they could start getting worried or anything like that. But as far as documenting, there's so much cool stuff now with Instagram and everything, and just sharing experiences in general. And I take a lot of pictures for my blog as well. A lot of it has to do with I use a tripod when I'm doing solo photos and either a Bluetooth remote or I'll use like an app that'll just take pictures spaced out like every half a second or 1 second depending on what's going on. And so that way I can capture photos, a lot of them very quickly, and then it actually doesn't take a lot of time out of the experience that I'm having, because that's something, and I'm sure you've probably seen this recently. A lot of people have asked me, oh, I just feel like I'm consumed with like going hiking to take photos or traveling to take photos. And I definitely take a lot of pictures, do not get me wrong. But when you take 10 to 20 photos at a time, 1 second apart on your phone through an app where you just click it, I mean, you can very easily have 100 photos in less than 5 minutes and then be done, and then go on to experience the rest of your, day, your hike, etc., without having to take any more pictures if you don't want to or anything like that, and still getting some great documentation. So I don't spend like a ton of time, while I'm doing activities like hiking or, kayaking or doing, stand up paddleboarding or anything like that. Not a ton of time is devoted actually to taking photos. It's just I get a lot of photos when I take them, so that I find, ones that I think are really good.
Our guest today,
Thanks.
Andrea Cannon, the Utahfulworld.com. That's her blog. You can check it out there. Definitely do that. And she's been talking about Instagram, so let's put up her Instagram account. You'll find her there at Andrea F. Cannon, okay? And then also on Pinterest, little platform, social platform they call Pinterest, Beautiful World there as well. So you're taking these pictures, you're going on these hikes, and in many ways, many cases, you're sharing this via social media.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Why are you sharing these experiences? What is it about social media that is meaningful or has a purpose for you and what you do in your travel?
Absolutely. So, everything first started out with just sharing it for my friends and family, right? And I think we probably all start out that way where, you have some really cool experiences and you want to share them with your family and friends. Utah is just so incredibly different from North Carolina and, the friends and family I have back there, that it just, the landscapes, honestly, even now, even living here for 5 years, sometimes they just don't seem real. They're so cool. But the reason why I have decided to focus a little bit more on social media and my blog and everything is a couple reasons. So the first one just is to inspire people because, like we've just been talking about, sometimes people just don't think that they can, get out there and go do their thing. And so I really hope to like inspire other people to feel like they can travel, to feel like they can get outside and share their stories as well. And that's one of the things, I mean, if you take a look at my Instagram bio, that's on there specifically to inspire others to travel, get outside, and share their stories.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's definitely really important to me because I think, just the outdoors and feeling like the traveling and getting to experience other cultures and areas, even just within the United States. Like if you don't want to travel outside the country, there's still so many other things to experience, outside of your home state or city. So, it'll change your perspective and help you understand, just people in general. And so I think that's really helpful. But the other thing that I really love about the Instagram platform is actually the people and connecting with people. So I have met up with, I don't know, at least 10 to 15 people that I've previously met through Instagram only. And so that's really cool, like actually forming those relationships, meeting up with people, going hiking with them or traveling with them. A couple weeks ago, I went down to Kanab and met up with a couple of girls that I met, through Instagram. That same week, I went hiking with two girls that I had met on Instagram that I did not know before. I have weekly or every other week, weekly, depending, strategy sessions with someone I had met through Instagram and then ended up meeting in person when I went to Dallas one time for work. But we talk like every single week and do like strategy business planning sessions and stuff. So, I mean, I met her through Instagram. Like, there's just so many ways to connect with people that you wouldn't have met otherwise through that platform and a lot of social media platforms. But I think Instagram, especially because you're likely following those same people, that are interested in the same things you're interested in. Another example, so I finally bought my first like real camera. I've previously only been doing things through my cell phone, and I bought it about a month ago, and I bought it off of a recommendation of someone I've never met in person, but on Instagram. And I bought it. I messaged her. I saw her blog. I went through it. I chose to purchase that camera, that she recommended, and then we had a phone call about it afterward. She's just giving me tips and everything, and I've never met her in person. And so that's why I think the app is just like incredibly cool. And I know sometimes it gets a bad rep or something like that, but I'd really encourage people who are thinking about Instagram is to really be authentic and real. Like, I know that you were mentioning, Zan, earlier about my captions. Like, I try to engage people and respond to them as a real person, right? Not like, oh, thank you. Like, but no, like if they're asking me questions, like I really do give responses, and like, I really use it to communicate with other people and inspire other people, like I said, through that platform. So I would just encourage, to continue to be authentic on the platform, and reach out and be, like a real human. So that's why I like Instagram.
One more question for you. What
Sure.
is travel hacking?
Oh yeah. So travel hacking, really, really cool, which is how I do so much traveling, honestly. So it's when you take kind of everything that you do, so your regular spending, everything like that, and kind of channel it appropriately. A lot of times it's through like credit cards, etc., like welcome bonuses on credit cards or anything like that, where you earn like points and then you can travel for free. So it's helpful, of course, if you travel already. So like things for work, I'll, get points and miles for traveling that way. But also when I travel for fun, if it's not already done on points and miles, I'll be earning more points and miles. So I'm pretty strategic in how I pick the airlines that I'm traveling on and the hotels I'm staying in, to all funnel towards travel hacking. So for example, my husband and I went and stayed in an over the water bungalow in the Maldives for 5 nights, and it was absolutely free. And that was through, credit card points and staying in Marriott hotels beforehand. And then, ended up getting those hotel nights for free. As a reference, it would have cost $16,000 to book that if I had booked it in cash. I was like, no. So it's pretty cool to have that experience, over the water bungalow. You're literally like, you can see there's like a portal thing. You can see like fish going under, and you have your own like infinity pool and everything like that. So it's just like one of the really cool examples. I mean, we stayed in Aspen for free, Kauai for free, lots of little things like, flying and everything, like lots of free flights, etc. So it's just channeling, like I said, your spending, your activities towards earning those points. So then therefore you get on the other side, the free travel.
Andrea, thank you so much for being our guest today.
Absolutely.
Very, very interesting. We'll wrap it up with this. What's your word of advice to travelers or traveler wannabes? And this is a challenging time now, of course. Maybe the advice is different, but somebody who's wanting to get out there and see the world, should they do it?
Absolutely. They should definitely do it. And even with, what's going on right now, I think that you can still be smart about the activities that you're choosing. Maybe you wouldn't go to the same place you would have gone before, or maybe that same place looks different than it did, 6 months ago. But I would still absolutely figure out what is safe and responsible for you and your family, and definitely go for it. And then once we are hopefully on the other side of this thing, making a list of the places that you want to go. I don't even really call it a bucket list necessarily, because I'm just, once I decide I want to go somewhere, I just try to take action and get there. But just, prioritize a place and make, the decision, make the plans to go there, and then do it.
Andrea Cannon has been our guest today for Wander to the Edge. Always great to spend some time with our friends and get to share them with the rest of our friends right here on social media. Zan, thanks for joining us and being a part of all this. Always good to spend this time with you and share these great friends. And Andrea is certainly one of them. So again, we can look up Andrea's information at beutahfulworld.com. Okay. You can also look her up same way on Pinterest. Check out some of these locations she's been to, these beautiful pictures that she's talking about, and the captions, the experience, and the heart and the soul that she puts into this. And then on Instagram, which you definitely need, we've got her Instagram account. It's a fantastic account.
Yeah.
You find her there, Andrea F. Cannon. So, all right, look her up with that. I think we're going to wrap up today's edition of Wander to the Edge. Andrea, you're awesome. All the best to you and your husband. I know you guys are both professionally and with your travels. You guys do some pretty fascinating things, and I think very highly of you. So, thanks again for joining me and Zan for Wander to the Edge.